Every Sunday, I visited my mother and paid all her bills without a word. That's how it had been for 3 years. 3 years of driving across town in my aging Toyota, parking in the same spot under the elm tree that dropped leaves on my windshield, walking up the cracked concrete path to her front door. 3 years of letting myself in with the key she'd given me, finding her in the living room with the television too loud, smiling like I'd just made her day. "Oh, honey," she'd say, struggling up from her chair. "You didn't have to come." But I did have to come. Because if I didn't, the electric would get shut off. The water would stop running. The property taxes would go unpaid until the county started sending threatening letters. I never told her that. I'd just kiss her cheek, ask how she was feeling, and settle into the routine. While she talked about her week, I'd sort through the stack of envelopes on her kitchen counter. Bills, mostly, some junk mail. The occasional medical statement that made my stomach clench when I saw the numbers. I'd write the checks from my own account, sign my name, seal the envelopes, stack them neatly by her purse so she'd think she'd handled it herself. My mother was 74 and sharp as ever in most ways. She could remember everyone's birthday, recite recipes from memory, and beat me at Scrabble without breaking a sweat. But somewhere along the line, the bills had become too much. The due dates confused her. The automatic payments she'd set up had lapsed when she changed banks. Late fees piled up. I'd found a disconnection notice tucked behind her microwave once, 3 months overdue, so I'd stepped in, quietly. The way you do when someone you love is losing their grip on something but hasn't quite admitted it yet. My brother, on the other hand, had stepped into a different role entirely. Dennis showed up at Mom's house maybe twice a month, always on a Saturday afternoon when the weather was nice. He'd bring takeout, usually Chinese, and sit with her for an hour or two. They'd laugh. He'd tell stories about his job and sales, make her feel like he was doing great, living the dream. Then he'd leave, and she'd call me that night to tell me how wonderful it was to see him. "Dennis is so busy," she'd say, "but he always makes time for me." I'd agree. I'd say something like, "That's good, Mom. I'm glad he came by." What I didn't say was that Dennis hadn't paid a single bill, hadn't checked on her medications, hadn't noticed that the garage door opener was broken or that the downspout was leaking water into the foundation. He brought egg rolls and charm, and somehow that was enough. My wife, Lauren, saw through it immediately. "Your brother's a ghost," she said one Sunday evening after we'd gotten home. She was unloading the dishwasher, her movements sharp and efficient. "He shows up when it's convenient and disappears when it's not." "He's busy," I said, echoing my mother's words without believing them. Lauren stopped, a plate in her hand, and gave me a look. "You're busy, you have a full-time job, 2 kids, you still show up every single week. He has his own life. So do you." I didn't argue. Lauren was right, but what was I supposed to do? Confront Dennis? Demand he contribute? My mother adored him. She lit up when he walked in the room in a way she didn't for me. I was the dependable one, the steady one, the one who showed up like clockwork and faded into the wallpaper. That was fine. I'd made peace with it. Or I thought I had. The dinner happened in October. My mother's 75th birthday. Dennis insisted on hosting it at his place, which surprised me because Dennis didn't host anything. His condo was sleek and modern and looked like it belonged in a magazine, not like a place where actual people lived. Lauren and I arrived on time with a bakery cake and a card the kids had made. My mother was already there, sitting on Dennis's leather sofa with a glass of wine, laughing at something his girlfriend had said. Vanessa. That was her name. She was younger than Dennis by at least 10 years, with long, dark hair and the kind of confident smile that made you feel like you were intruding just by existing. She worked in marketing, I think, or consulting, something vague and impressive sounding. "There he is," Dennis said when I walked in, his voice loud and jovial. He clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends instead of brothers who barely spoke. The man of the hour. "It's Mom's birthday," I said. Right, but you know what I mean. The guy who keeps everything running." There was something in his tone, a little edge, a little mockery. But he smiled, so I smiled back. Dinner was catered, of course it was. Trays of pasta and roasted vegetables and some kind of fish I couldn't identify. Vanessa poured wine and made small talk about a trip they were planning to Italy. My mother beamed. My kids sat quietly, intimidated by the spotless furniture and the lack of anywhere to just be kids. We ate, we toasted. My mother opened her gifts. I'd gotten her a new cardigan and a gift card to her favorite bookstore. Dennis gave her a framed photo of the two of them from some event I hadn't been invited to. "I love it," she said, tears in her eyes. "You're so thoughtful, Dennis." I felt Lauren's hand on my knee under the table, a gentle squeeze, a reminder to breathe. It was after dessert when it happened. We were all sitting around the table, the conversation drifting into nothing, when my mother mentioned something about her property taxes. She said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather. "I'm so lucky I don't have to worry about that stuff anymore," she said. "It all just gets taken care of." Dennis leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. "Yeah, it's great, isn't it? You don't even have to think about it." My mother nodded. "I don't even know where the money comes from half the time." Dennis laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, and it cut through the room like a blade. "Don't worry," he said, looking at me across the table. "She doesn't even know where the money comes from." The table went quiet. Vanessa shifted in her seat. My mother frowned, confused. Lauren's hand tightened on my knee. Dennis was still smiling, like it was a joke, like it was funny. I smiled back. I picked up my wine glass and took a slow sip. I didn't say a word. Because what could I say? That I'd been paying her bills for 3 years? That I'd refinanced my own house to cover her medical expenses? That I'd been the one keeping her lights on while Dennis showed up with Chinese food and charm? If I said any of that, I'd sound bitter, small, like I was keeping score. So I said nothing. We left an hour later. The drive home was silent, except for the hum of the tires on the road. Lauren didn't ask if I was okay. She knew better. When we got home, I went into my office and closed the door. I sat at my desk and stared at the stack of papers I kept in the filing cabinet, documents I'd been collecting for months without really knowing why, power of attorney forms, bank statements, copies of checks I'd written, receipts for every payment I'd made on my mother's behalf. I'd thought I was just being organized, keeping records. But sitting there in the dark, I realized I'd been building something. I pulled out one document in particular, a legal form I'd had drafted 6 months ago, back when I'd first started to suspect that Dennis might try something. It was a precaution, a safeguard. I read it over. Then I signed it. Then I scanned it and sent it to my lawyer with a single line in the email. Execute immediately. I didn't tell Lauren. Not yet. I shut down my computer, turned off the light, and went to bed. The next morning, Dennis started calling. The first call came at 7:30. I was in the kitchen making coffee when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw his name. I didn't answer. He called again at 8, then 8:15, then 8:30. By 9 o'clock, he'd left 4 voicemails. I listened to the first one while Lauren got the kids ready for school. "Hey, it's me. Call me back. It's important." The second one was more urgent. "Seriously, I need to talk to you. Call me." The third one was angry. "What the hell did you do? Call me right now." The fourth one was almost frantic. "I swear to God, if you don't pick up..." I deleted them all. Then I poured myself a second cup of coffee and sat down at the table. Lauren came into the kitchen, her eyes sharp. "What's going on?" "Dennis is having a bad morning," I said. "Did you do something?" I looked at her over the rim of my mug. "I signed a document." She stared at me for a long moment. Then slowly, she smiled. "Good," she said. I didn't smile back. I wasn't sure what I was feeling yet. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't regret. It was something colder. Something that had been building for 3 years and had finally found an outlet. Dennis called 6 more times that day. I didn't answer any of them. By the time I went to bed that night, I had 14 missed calls and 9 voicemails I didn't bother to listen to. I slept better than I had in months. The document I'd signed wasn't complicated. In fact, that was the beauty of it. Simple, legal, irreversible. 6 months earlier, I'd met with a lawyer named Patricia Gaines. She was in her 50s, with short gray hair and the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that made you feel like you were wasting her time if you weren't direct. I'd found her through a referral from a coworker who'd gone through a messy estate situation with his own parents. I'd told her everything, the bills, the quiet payments, the way Dennis had positioned himself as the favorite son while contributing nothing. I'd shown her the documents I'd been keeping, the canceled checks, the bank statements, the receipts. Patricia had listened without interrupting. When I finished, she'd leaned back in her chair and folded her hands on her desk. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want to protect my mother," I said. "From what?" "From him." She'd nodded slowly. "Do you think he's going to try to take control of her finances?" "I don't know. Maybe. He's charming. He's persuasive. If something happens to her, if she gets worse, I think he'll try to step in and take over, and I think he'll drain everything she has left." Patricia had tapped her pen against her desk. "You're probably right. Men like that don't change. They escalate." She'd drafted a document that afternoon, a durable power of attorney, naming me as the sole agent for my mother's financial and medical decisions in the event she became incapacitated. It also included a clause revoking any previous powers of attorney and explicitly preventing anyone else from claiming authority. The trick was getting my mother to sign it. I'd waited for the right moment. A Sunday afternoon when she was in a good mood, relaxed, not distracted by anything pressing. I'd brought the document with me, along with a notary I'd hired to meet us at her house. "Mom, I need you to sign something," I'd said, keeping my tone casual. "What is it?" "Just a legal thing. It makes sure that if anything happens and you can't make decisions for yourself, I can step in and help. It's standard stuff. Everyone should have one." She'd frowned at the papers. "Why now?" "Because you're getting older, and I want to make sure you're protected. That's all." I hadn't mentioned Dennis. I hadn't needed to. My mother had signed without hesitation, trusting me the way she always had. The notary had stamped it, and it was done. I'd filed the original with Patricia and kept copies in my office. And then I'd waited. For 6 months, nothing had changed. Dennis had continued his Saturday visits. I'd continued my Sunday routine. My mother had remained blissfully unaware that anything legal had shifted beneath her feet. But now, with one email to Patricia, the document was active, filed with the county, registered with my mother's bank, sent to her doctor's office and the hospital where she'd had surgery last year. As of 7:30 Monday morning, I was the only person with legal authority over my mother's finances. And Dennis had just found out. His calls continued through Tuesday. I let them all go to voicemail. I didn't listen to them. I didn't need to. I could imagine what he was saying. The anger, the confusion, the disbelief. By Wednesday, he switched tactics. He showed up at my office. I worked as a project manager for a mid-sized engineering firm. Nothing glamorous. I had a cubicle near the back of the floor, surrounded by other cubicles filled with people who kept their heads down and did their jobs. It was quiet. Predictable. Dennis didn't belong there. I saw him before he saw me. He was standing near the reception desk talking to Brenda, our front desk coordinator. She looked uncomfortable, glancing toward the back of the office like she was hoping someone would intervene. I stood up and walked toward them. Dennis's head snapped toward me the moment I came into view. His face was flushed, his tie loosened. He looked like he'd been up all night. "We need to talk," he said. "Not here," I said. "Then where?" I gestured toward the elevator. "Outside." We rode down in silence. The air between us was thick with tension, the kind that made every breath feel deliberate. When the elevator doors opened, I led him out to the parking lot, away from the building entrance where people smoked and gossiped during their breaks. Dennis didn't waste time. "What the hell did you do?" he said, his voice low and sharp. "I filed a power of attorney," I said. "Standard legal document. Nothing dramatic." "Bullshit. I tried to access Mom's account yesterday, and they told me I didn't have authorization. They said you're the only one who can make changes now." I raised an eyebrow. "Why were you trying to access her account?" He hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. "I was checking on something," he said. "Checking on what?" "That's not the point. The point is you went behind my back and locked me out." "I didn't lock you out," I said. "You were never in." His jaw tightened. "I'm her son." "So am I." "You can't do this." "I already did." He stepped closer, his eyes narrowed. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Sneaking around, getting her to sign papers she didn't understand." "She understood perfectly," I said. "I explained everything. She signed willingly, with a notary present." "She didn't know what she was signing." "She knew exactly what she was signing, and if you want to challenge it, you're welcome to try. But you'll lose. Because I have 3 years of documentation showing that I've been the one taking care of her, while you've been showing up with takeout and empty promises." Dennis's face went red. For a moment, I thought he might actually swing at me. His hands clenched into fists. His breathing quickened, but he didn't. Because we were standing in a parking lot in broad daylight, surrounded by cars and security cameras. And Dennis, for all his bluster, wasn't stupid enough to make a scene he couldn't control. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," I said. I turned and walked back toward the building. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel his eyes on me, burning with the kind of rage that comes from realizing you've been outmaneuvered. When I got back to my cubicle, my hands were shaking. Lauren called me during lunch. "Dennis came by the house," she said. My stomach dropped. "When?" "About an hour ago. I was working from home. He rang the doorbell, and when I answered, he asked if you were here." "What did you say?" "I told him you were at work. Then he asked if we could talk. I said no. Then he asked if I knew what you'd done. I said yes. Then he left." I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I expected this." "Did he threaten you?" "No. But he looked like he wanted to. He kept clenching his jaw like he was trying to keep himself from saying something he'd regret. If he comes back, he won't, and if he does, I'll call the police. I'm not afraid of him. I believed her. Lauren was 5'3" and 110 pounds, but she had a spine made of steel. She'd grown up with 3 older brothers and had learned early how to hold her ground. I should have told you I was doing this, I said. You should have, but I understand why you didn't. Yeah? You wanted to be sure it would work before you said anything. You didn't want to get my hopes up. She was right. That was exactly why I hadn't told her. I love you, I said. I know. Now get back to work, and if Dennis shows up again, call me. I hung up and stared at my computer screen. My email inbox was full of unread messages, but I couldn't focus on any of them. My mind was spinning, replaying the conversation in the parking lot, imagining what Dennis might do next. He wasn't going to let this go. I knew that. Men like Dennis didn't back down when they were challenged. They escalated. But I'd been ready for that. I'd been ready for this from the moment I'd walked into Patricia's office 6 months ago. I pulled up my email and started a new message to Patricia. Subject, potential escalation. Body. Dennis confronted me today. He's angry. He tried to access my mother's account and was denied. I expect he'll try to contest the POA. What's our next move? I hit send and leaned back in my chair. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. I stared at the screen. Then I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Patricia. Then I blocked the number and went back to work. The incident at my mother's house changed everything. Not because of what Dennis did, but because of what my mother saw. For the first time, she witnessed his rage firsthand. She saw him shove me. She heard him accuse me of stealing, and in that moment, whatever illusions she'd been holding onto about her golden boy shattered. She called me the next day. I want to change my will, she said. I was at work, sitting in my cubicle, and her words hit me like a punch to the chest. Mom, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do. I've been thinking about it all night. Dennis doesn't deserve anything, not after what he did. He's your son. So are you, and you're the one who's been taking care of me. I should have seen it sooner. Mom, don't argue with me. I've made up my mind. I called Patricia that afternoon and relayed the conversation. She wants to disinherit him? Patricia asked. It sounds like it. That's a big decision, and it'll make things worse with Dennis. I know, but it's her choice. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'll draft a new will, but I need to meet with her in person. I need to make sure this is really what she wants and that she's competent to make the decision. She's competent. I'm not doubting you, but if Dennis challenges this later, I need to be able to testify that she understood what she was doing. We scheduled a meeting for the following week. I drove my mother to Patricia's office and waited in the lobby while they talked. It took over an hour. When they finally came out, my mother looked tired but resolute. It's done, she said. Are you sure? I'm sure. Patricia walked us to the door. I'll file the new will with the county tomorrow. Dennis won't know about it unless you tell him or unless he contests it after your mother passes. Either way, it's legally binding. Thank you, I said. On the drive home, my mother was quiet. I didn't push her to talk. I knew she was processing, probably second-guessing herself, probably feeling the weight of what she'd just done. Do you think I'm being cruel? She asked finally. No, I said. I think you're being smart. He's going to hate me. He already hates me. You're just making it official. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. How did it come to this? I don't know, Mom, but we're going to get through it. Dennis found out about the will 2 weeks later. I don't know how. Maybe my mother told him in a moment of guilt. Maybe Vanessa figured it out. Maybe he hired someone to dig into her legal records. But he found out, and he lost whatever restraint he'd been clinging to. The first sign was the phone calls. Not to me, to my mother. He called her constantly, sometimes a dozen times a day. She stopped answering after the first few, but he left voicemails. Long, rambling messages that swung between pleading and threatening. Mom, please, you have to fix this. He's manipulating you. He's turning you against me. I'm your son. Doesn't that mean anything to you? If you don't change this, you're going to regret it. She played one for me during a Sunday visit. Her hands were shaking as she held the phone. He sounds desperate, she said. He is desperate. What if he does something? Like what? I don't know. Something bad. I took the phone from her and deleted the voicemail. If he calls again, don't listen. Just hang up. I can't ignore him forever. You can until he calms down. But Dennis didn't calm down. 3 days later, he showed up at my house. It was late, almost 10 o'clock. Lauren and I were in bed, half asleep, when we heard the pounding on the front door. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Wrong house. But then I heard his voice. "Open the door. I know you're in there." I got up, pulled on a pair of jeans, and went downstairs. Lauren followed, her phone in her hand. "Should I call the police?" she asked. "Not yet. Let me see what he wants." I opened the door but left the chain on. Dennis was standing on the porch, his face flushed, his eyes wild. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You need to leave," I said. "No. You need to listen." "I'm not doing this, Dennis. Go home." "You destroyed me. You know that? Everything I had is gone. My condo, my car. Vanessa left me. It's all gone because of you." "I didn't do any of that." "You did. You turned Mom against me. You poisoned her." "I told her the truth. That's all." He slammed his hand against the door, and I instinctively stepped back. Lauren moved to the stairs, her phone raised. "You think you've won," Dennis said. "But you haven't. This isn't over." "Yes, it is." "No, it's not. Because I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. I'm going to tell everyone that you stole from her, that you manipulated her, that you're a liar. Go ahead. No one will believe you." "They will, because I'll make them believe." I closed the door and locked it. Dennis pounded on it a few more times, shouting, but then he stopped. I heard his footsteps retreating, then the sound of his car starting and driving away. Lauren was still on the stairs, her face pale. "That was bad," she said. "Yeah, we should call the police." "And say what? That my brother came to my house and yelled at me? They won't do anything." "He threatened you." "Vaguely. He didn't say he was going to hurt me. He just said he was going to ruin my reputation." She came down the stairs and put her arms around me. "This is getting out of control." "I know. What are we going to do?" "I don't know yet, but we're going to figure it out." The next morning, I called Patricia and told her what had happened. "He's escalating," she said. "You need to document this. Write down everything he said. Note the time, the date, everything. And if he shows up again, call the police immediately." "Will they do anything?" "Maybe not the first time, but if he keeps coming back, you can file for a restraining order." "A restraining order against my own brother?" "Yes, if that's what it takes." I hung up and sat at my desk, staring at the wall. I didn't want a restraining order. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted Dennis to leave us alone. But I was starting to realize that wasn't going to happen. That afternoon, Dennis made his next move. He went to my mother's church. I found out from one of her friends, a woman named Dorothy, who'd known my mother for decades. She called me that evening, her voice hesitant. "I don't want to get involved," she said, "but I thought you should know. Dennis was at church today. He talked to a lot of people." "What did he say?" "He said you'd taken over your mother's finances and were keeping him away from her. He said you'd manipulated her into changing her will. He was crying. He seemed really upset." I closed my eyes. "And people believed him?" "I don't know. Some of them seemed sympathetic. Others weren't sure what to think." "Did anyone talk to my mother?" "Not that I know of, but word's going to get back to her eventually." "Thanks for letting me know, Dorothy." "I'm sorry. I know this must be hard." I hung up and told Lauren what Dorothy had said. "He's playing the victim," Lauren said. "Of course he is. That's what he does." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to talk to Mom. I'm going to make sure she knows what he's saying before someone else tells her." I called my mother that night and explained what Dennis had done. She listened in silence, and when I finished, she sighed. "I'll talk to Dorothy," she said, "and anyone else who asks. I'll set the record straight." "You don't have to do that." "Yes, I do, because this is my fault. I let Dennis get away with too much for too long, and now he thinks he can do whatever he wants." "It's not your fault, Mom." "It is, but I'm going to fix it." Over the next week, my mother made a series of phone calls. She talked to Dorothy, to her pastor, to the other women in her prayer group. She told them the truth about the bills, about the power of attorney, about Dennis's behavior. And slowly the narrative started to shift. People stopped looking at me with suspicion. They started looking at Dennis with doubt. The gossip didn't stop, but it changed direction. Dennis, for his part, went silent again. No calls, no visits, no public confrontations. It was the kind of silence that felt dangerous. Lauren felt it too. "He's planning something," she said one night. "I know." "What do you think it is?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's going to be big." I was right. The attack came a week later, and it came from an angle I hadn't anticipated. Dennis filed a lawsuit. The lawsuit was delivered to my house on a Thursday afternoon by a process server who looked bored and vaguely apologetic. I signed for it, closed the door, and stood in the entryway, staring at the envelope. Lauren came downstairs carrying a laundry basket. She saw my face and set it down. "What is it?" she asked. "Dennis is suing me." She crossed the room and took the envelope from my hands. She pulled out the paperwork and scanned it, her expression darkening with every line. "Undue influence, financial exploitation, fraud. He's claiming you coerced your mother into signing the power of attorney and changing her will. I didn't coerce anyone. I know that. But he's going to try to prove it anyway." I sank down onto the stairs, my legs suddenly weak. He's not going to win. Probably not, but he's going to drag this out as long as he can. And it's going to cost you money. Legal fees, time off work, stress. That's the point. He wants to bleed me dry. Lauren set the papers down on the hallway table and sat next to me. "We'll fight this. We'll win, but it's going to be ugly." She was right. It was ugly from the start. I called Patricia that evening, and she was already aware of the lawsuit. Dennis's lawyer had copied her on the filing. "He's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks," Patricia said. "Undue influence is notoriously hard to prove, especially when you have documentation showing your mother was competent and willing, but he's betting that the process itself will wear you down." "How long is this going to take?" "Months, maybe a year. Depends on how far he wants to push it." "And how much is it going to cost?" She paused. "More than you want to spend." "Give me a number." "If we go to trial? 50 to 70,000, maybe more." I felt the air leave my lungs. "I don't have that kind of money." "Then we settle." "No. If I settle, it's admitting I did something wrong." "Not necessarily. Settlements are common in these cases. We can negotiate terms that protect your mother's estate while giving Dennis something to walk away with. He doesn't deserve anything." "I agree, but you need to think practically. A settlement might be cheaper in the long run." "I'll think about it." But I already knew I wasn't going to settle. I couldn't. If I gave Dennis even an inch, it would validate everything he'd been saying. It would make me look guilty. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the fight. Patricia and I met multiple times, going over every document, every interaction, every decision I'd made regarding my mother's care. We built a timeline. We organized evidence. We drafted responses to every claim Dennis had made. And then, just when I thought I had a handle on things, the depositions started. Dennis's lawyer was a man named Richard Keller. He was in his 50s, with silver hair and a voice like gravel. He had the kind of confidence that came from years of courtroom victories, and he wielded it like a weapon. My deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at Keller's office downtown. Patricia came with me, and we sat across the table from Keller and Dennis. A court reporter was there too, her fingers poised over her stenography machine. Keller started with softballs, my name, my address, my relationship to my mother. Then he moved into the real questions. "When did you first become aware that your mother was having difficulty managing her finances?" "About 3 years ago." "And what did you do about it?" "I started helping her, paying her bills, making sure everything was taken care of." "Did you ask your brother to help?" "No." "Why not?" "Because he wasn't involved." "Did you tell him what you were doing?" "Not initially." "Why not?" Because it didn't occur to me. I was just doing what needed to be done." Keller leaned back in his chair. "So, you unilaterally decided to take over your mother's finances without consulting anyone else in the family?" "I didn't take over. I helped." "Without telling your brother?" "Correct." "And at some point, you had your mother sign a power of attorney naming you as her sole agent?" "Yes." "Did you consult your brother before doing that?" "No." "Why not?" "Because he had no legal right to be consulted." Keller smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "You were worried he might object, weren't you?" "No." "You were worried he might try to stop you?" "No. I wasn't worried about anything. I was protecting my mother." "From your brother?" "If necessary, yes." Dennis shifted in his seat, his jaw tight. Keller made a note on his legal pad. "Did your mother understand what she was signing when she signed the power of attorney?" "Yes." "How do you know?" "Because I explained it to her, and because a notary was present." "Did the notary explain it to her?" "I assume so. That's their job." "But you didn't hear the notary explain it?" "No. I stepped out of the room to give them privacy." Keller pounced. "So you don't actually know what was said between your mother and the notary?" "No, but I know my mother, and I know she understood." "You're speculating." I'm stating a fact. The deposition went on for 4 hours. Keller asked the same questions in different ways, trying to trip me up, trying to get me to contradict myself, but I'd prepared. I stayed calm. I answered every question truthfully. When it was over, Patricia and I walked to the parking garage in silence. When we got to my car, she finally spoke. You did well. It didn't feel like it. Keller's good, but you didn't give him anything. He's going to have a hard time proving undue influence based on that testimony. What about Dennis's deposition? It's next week, and I'm going to tear him apart. She did. Dennis's deposition was a disaster for him. Patricia asked him pointed questions about his relationship with our mother, his financial situation, and his motivations for filing the lawsuit. He tried to deflect. He tried to play the victim. But Patricia was relentless. When was the last time you paid one of your mother's bills? I don't remember. Was it in the last year? I don't know. The last 2 years? I'm not sure. Have you ever paid one of your mother's bills? Dennis hesitated. Not directly. What does that mean? I've given her money. When? I don't remember. How much? I don't know. Do you have any records of these payments? No. Patricia paused, letting the silence stretch. So you're claiming you financially supported your mother, but you have no proof. I don't need proof. I know what I did. But your brother has proof. He has 3 years of canceled checks, bank statements, and receipts showing he paid every bill. Do you dispute that? Dennis's face reddened. He's using that against me. He's using it as evidence that he's been taking care of your mother, something you haven't done. That's not fair. Isn't it? Keller tried to object, but the damage was done. By the end of the deposition, Dennis looked like he'd been run over by a truck. Patricia called me that evening. He's going to drop the lawsuit, she said. How do you know? Because Keller knows he's going to lose, and he's not going to waste his client's money on a case he can't win. So it's over? Almost. We'll get the dismissal in writing, and then it's over. 2 weeks later, the lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning Dennis couldn't refile. Patricia sent me a copy of the court order, and I stared at it for a long time, trying to process what it meant. I'd won. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving. Lauren and I celebrated quietly that night with takeout and a bottle of wine. The kids were at a sleepover, so it was just the two of us. It's really over? She asked. As far as the lawsuit goes, yeah. But not with Dennis. No, not with Dennis. She sipped her wine, her eyes thoughtful. He's not going to stop, is he? No, he's going to keep trying. He's going to keep pushing until something breaks. So what do? We wait, and we stay ready. I didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks after the lawsuit was dismissed, Dennis made his move, and this time it wasn't legal. It was physical. It started with a phone call from my mother. She was crying, her voice shaky. He took my keys, she said. What? Who took your keys? Dennis. He was here. He came in and started yelling at me. He said I'd ruined his life. He said I owed him. And then he took my car keys and left. My heart was pounding. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? No, but he scared me. I'm coming over. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. I hung up and grabbed my jacket. Lauren was already standing, her face pale. What happened? Dennis went to Mom's house. He took her car keys. Why would he do that? I don't know, but I'm going over there. I'm coming with you. We drove to my mother's house in silence, my mind racing. Why would Dennis take her keys? What was he planning? When we arrived, my mother opened the door before I could knock. She looked small and frail, her hands trembling. He's losing it, she said. He's completely losing it. Did he say anything else? He kept saying I owed him, that I'd taken everything from him, that he was going to take something back. Did he say what? No. He just took the keys and left. I pulled out my phone and called the police. I explained the situation, and they said they'd send an officer to take a report. Then I called Patricia. He's escalating, she said. This is theft, and possibly elder abuse. What can I do? File a police report, get a restraining order, and keep your mother safe. The police arrived 20 minutes later. A young officer named Thompson took my mother's statement, and I gave him a description of Dennis and his car. He said they'd put out a notice, but he didn't seem optimistic about recovering the keys quickly. Why would he take her car keys? Thompson asked. I think he's trying to punish her, I said. Or me, or both of us. Thompson made a note. We'll do what we can. After he left, Lauren and I stayed with my mother. We helped her calm down, made her tea, and assured her that everything was going to be okay. but I wasn't sure it was, because Dennis had crossed a line. He'd gone from legal threats to actual theft, and I didn't know what he was going to do next. I found out the next morning. Dennis crashed my mother's car into a storage unit facility at 2 a.m. I got the call from the police at 6:30. I was barely awake, fumbling for my phone on the nightstand when I heard the dispatcher's voice. "Is this the son of Eleanor Patterson?" "Yes." "We have a situation involving a vehicle registered to your mother. Can you come down to the station?" I was dressed and out the door in 10 minutes. Lauren stayed behind to get the kids ready for school, but she made me promise to call her as soon as I knew what was happening. At the station, Officer Thompson met me in the lobby. He looked tired, like he'd been up all night. "Your brother crashed your mother's car," he said. "Is he okay?" "He's fine. No injuries, but the car's totaled." "What was he doing with it?" "We're still piecing that together, but it looks like he tried to break into a storage unit facility. He rammed the car through the gate." I stared at him. "Why would he do that?" "We were hoping you could tell us." "I have no idea." Thompson led me to an interview room where Dennis was sitting, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him. "Why'd you do it?" I asked. He didn't answer. "Dennis, why'd you crash Mom's car?" Still nothing. Thompson stepped forward. "He's not talking, but we found some documents in the car. Storage unit rental agreements. In your mother's name." My stomach dropped. "She doesn't have a storage unit." "Are you sure?" "Yes. I handle all her accounts. There's no storage unit." Thompson pulled out a folder and showed me the paperwork. It was a rental agreement for a unit at a facility called Secure Space, dated 6 months ago. My mother's name was on it, along with a signature that looked like hers, but wasn't quite right. "He forged it," I said. "That's what we think, but we need to confirm with your mother." "What was he storing?" "We don't know yet. The unit was empty when we got there." I looked at Dennis, who was still staring at the floor. "What was in the unit, Dennis?" He finally looked up, and his eyes were hollow. "Nothing that matters now." "What does that mean?" "It means I lost. You won. Are you happy?" "I'm not happy about any of this." "Liar." Thompson cleared his throat. "We're going to charge him with theft, forgery, and destruction of property. Maybe more, depending on what we find, but you're free to go." I stood up, my legs shaky. "What happens to him?" "He'll be arraigned in the morning. Then it's up to the judge." I left the station and called Lauren from the parking lot. "Dennis crashed Mom's car," I said. "Is he okay?" "Physically, yeah. But he's in custody. They're charging him." "With what?" "Theft, forgery, destruction of property." She was quiet for a moment. "How do you feel?" "I don't know. Numb, I think." "Are you coming home?" "Not yet. I need to go see Mom. She needs to know what happened." I drove to my mother's house and found her in the living room, watching the news. She looked up when I walked in, her expression anxious. "Did they find the car?" she asked. "Yeah, but it's totaled. Dennis crashed it." Her face crumpled. "Oh no. He's in custody. They're charging him." She started to cry, and I sat down next to her, putting my arm around her shoulders. "I'm sorry, Mom. It's not your fault. I know, but I still feel like I could have done something to prevent this." "You couldn't." Dennis made his choices. We sat there for a while, not saying anything. Then she asked, "What's going to happen to him?" "I don't know. Depends on the charges. But he's probably going to jail." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "I never thought it would come to this." Neither did I. Over the next few days, the story came together. The storage unit had been Dennis's last-ditch attempt to hide assets. He'd rented it using my mother's forged signature and had been storing items he'd stolen from her house over the past few months. Small things, jewelry, old photographs, documents, things he thought he could sell or use as leverage. But when I'd taken control of her finances, he'd panicked. He'd realized he couldn't access the unit without being caught, so he tried to break in and clear it out before anyone found out. The crash had ruined everything. The police had seized the unit's contents, and forensic accountants were now going through every item, looking for additional evidence of fraud. Dennis's arraignment was set for the following Monday. Patricia advised me not to attend, but I went anyway. I wanted to see it through. The courtroom was small and institutional, with fluorescent lights and worn wooden benches. Dennis was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The judge read the charges: theft, forgery, destruction of property, attempted burglary. Each one felt like a hammer blow. Dennis's lawyer, a public defender who looked overwhelmed, entered a plea of not guilty. The judge set bail at $50,000. Dennis didn't make bail. Vanessa was gone. His friends were gone. There was no one left to help him. He was remanded to custody, and I watched as they led him out of the courtroom. He looked back once, his eyes meeting mine. There was no anger in them anymore, just defeat. I left the courthouse and sat in my car for a long time, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. My brother was going to jail. My brother, who I'd grown up with, who I'd shared a room with as a kid, who'd been a pain in the ass but still family, was going to jail. And I'd played a part in it. Not directly. I hadn't forced him to steal. I hadn't forced him to forge documents or crash a car. But I'd set the wheels in motion by protecting my mother, by cutting off his access to her money, by refusing to let him exploit her. I called Lauren. "It's done," I said. "How are you?" "I don't know. Come home?" I drove home and spent the rest of the day with my family. We didn't talk about Dennis. We didn't talk about the lawsuit or the crash or any of it. We just existed together, and that was enough. But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything. The dinner where Dennis had mocked me, the power of attorney, the APS investigation, the lawsuit, the crash. Every step had been necessary. Every decision had been the right one, but it still felt heavy. Lauren rolled over and looked at me in the dark. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I don't know." "You did the right thing." "I know." "Then why do you look so miserable?" "Because it didn't have to be this way. If Dennis had just been a decent person, none of this would have happened. Mom would still have her car. He wouldn't be in jail. We'd still be a family. You're still a family. Are we? Because it doesn't feel like it." She reached out and took my hand. "You protected your mother. That's what matters. Everything else is on Dennis." I knew she was right, but it didn't make it easier. 2 weeks later, Dennis took a plea deal. 5 years probation, restitution for the car, and mandatory financial counseling. No jail time, but a felony on his record. Patricia called to tell me. "It's over," she said. "Yeah. You should feel good about this. You won." "I don't feel like I won." "I know, but you did. You protected your mother. You did everything right." I hung up and stared out the window at the backyard. The grass needed mowing, the fence needed painting, normal things, mundane things, but nothing felt normal anymore. That Sunday, I went to my mother's house like always. I paid her bills. We talked about the weather, about the kids, about anything but Dennis. Before I left, she hugged me at the door. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not giving up, for protecting me, for being the son I could count on." I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged her back. As I drove home, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered it anyway. "Hello?" "It's me," Dennis said. I almost hung up, but something stopped me. "What do you want?" I asked. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I didn't respond. "I know you probably don't believe me, but I am. I messed up. I messed up everything." "Yeah, you did." "I was desperate. I owed people money. I thought Mom would help, but you blocked me." "I didn't block you. I protected her." "I know. I see that now." There was a long pause. Then he said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." He hung up before I could respond. I sat in the driveway for a long time, staring at the phone. Then I deleted the call log and went inside. Lauren was in the kitchen, making dinner. She looked up when I walked in. "How's your mom?" "She's okay." "And you?" "I'm getting there." She smiled. "Good." That night, I slept better than I had in months. The weight I'd been carrying was still there, but it felt lighter somehow, manageable. I'd done what I needed to do. I'd protected my mother. I'd stood my ground, and I'd survived. That was enough, for now. 3 months passed without incident. Dennis stayed away. No calls, no visits, no angry voicemails. It was like he'd vanished from our lives, leaving only the wreckage of what he'd done behind. My mother adjusted. She bought a new car, a modest sedan that I helped her pick out. She stopped mentioning Dennis's name unless I asked, and even then, her answers were short and careful, like she was afraid of saying too much. I fell back into my routine. Sundays at her house, bills paid, quiet conversations. The normalcy was almost surreal after everything that had happened, but the silence didn't last. It never does. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was at work, reviewing a project timeline, when my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. I answered. "Hello. Is this Eleanor Patterson's son?" A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped. "Yes. Who's calling?" "My name is Angela Reeves. I'm a caseworker with the Office of the Public Guardian. I need to speak with you about your mother. My stomach dropped. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, but we've received a referral indicating that your mother may need a guardian appointed to manage her affairs. A referral from who? I can't disclose that information. But I already knew. Dennis. It had to be Dennis. My mother doesn't need a guardian, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I have power of attorney. I've been managing her affairs for 3 years. I understand. But the referral raises concerns about potential conflicts of interest. We're required to investigate. This is harassment. Oh, my brother is the one who filed this, isn't he? He's been trying to undermine me for months. I can't comment on who filed the referral, but I will need to meet with your mother to assess her competency and living situation. Can we schedule a time? I wanted to refuse. I wanted to hang up and call Patricia and figure out how to make this go away. But I knew that would only make things worse. Fine, I said. When? How about Friday morning, 10 o'clock? I'll be there. I called Patricia as soon as I hung up. They're sending a guardian investigator, I said. Of course they are. Dennis is using every tool he has left. Can they actually appoint a guardian? Only if they determine your mother is incapacitated and you're not acting in her best interest. But that's a high bar. You have documentation, you have the power of attorney, you're doing everything right. So why does this feel like I'm losing? Because Dennis is making you play defense, and defense is exhausting, but you're going to win this, just like you won everything else. I wanted to believe her, but I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of justifying myself, tired of Dennis. That evening, I told Lauren about the call. He's not going to stop, she said. I know. So, what are you going to do? I'm going to cooperate with the investigation. I'm going to show them everything, and then I'm going to end this. How? I don't know yet, but I'm done playing defense. Friday morning, I met Angela Reeves at my mother's house. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her early 30s, with blonde hair pulled into a tight bun and a no-nonsense demeanor. My mother let us in, looking nervous. I'd explained the situation to her the night before, and she'd been upset but resigned. Angela sat down in the living room and pulled out a notebook. Mrs. Patterson, I'm here to make sure you're safe and that your needs are being met. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer as honestly as you can. My mother nodded. Do you feel safe in your home? Yes. Do you have enough food and medication? Yes. Who helps you manage your bills and finances? My son. He's been doing it for years. And do you trust him? Of course I do. Angela made a note. Then she looked at me. Can I see your documentation? I handed her the binders I'd brought, the same ones I'd shown to APS, to Patricia, to everyone who'd questioned me. She spent 20 minutes going through them, her expression neutral. When she finished, she closed the binders and looked at my mother. Mrs. Patterson, do you understand that your son has legal authority over your finances? Yes. And you're comfortable with that arrangement? Very comfortable. Angela nodded and stood up. Thank you for your time. I'll submit my report within a week. After she left, my mother turned to me, her face pale. Is this ever going to end? She asked. I don't know, Mom, but I'm going to make sure it does. Angela's report came back the following Tuesday. No findings, no recommendations for a guardian, a case closed. I should have felt relieved, but I didn't, because I knew Dennis wasn't done. He'd filed an APS complaint, he'd filed a lawsuit, he'd filed a guardian referral, and he'd keep filing things until something stuck, or until he ran out of options. I couldn't keep living like this. Neither could my mother, so I decided to go on the offensive. I called Patricia. I want to file a harassment claim, I said. Against Dennis? Yes. What grounds? Frivolous lawsuits, false complaints, theft, stalking, take your pick. Patricia was quiet for a moment. It's risky. If you file and lose, it could backfire. I don't care. I'm done letting him control the narrative. Okay, but we're going to need evidence. A pattern of behavior, documented incidents, dates, times, witnesses. I have all of that. Then let's do it. We spent the next 2 weeks building the case. Every phone call Dennis had made, every voicemail he'd left, every complaint he'd filed, every lawsuit he'd initiated. We compiled it into a timeline showing a clear pattern of harassment aimed at me and my mother. Patricia filed the claim in civil court, and Dennis was served a week later. His response came faster than I expected. He called me the next day, his voice shaking with rage. You filed a harassment claim against me? Yes. You're insane. I'm your brother. You're a bully, and I'm done with you. You're going to regret this. Everyone keeps saying that, but I haven't yet." He hung up, and I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. The hearing was scheduled for the end of the month. Dennis showed up without a lawyer, representing himself. He looked disheveled, desperate. The judge listened to both sides. Patricia presented our evidence. Dennis tried to argue that he was just looking out for our mother, that I'd manipulated her, that I'd turned her against him. The judge wasn't impressed. "Mr. Patterson, the evidence shows a clear pattern of behavior designed to harass and intimidate your brother and your mother. You've filed multiple complaints, all of which have been dismissed. You've stolen property. You've forged documents. And now you're claiming to be the victim. I don't buy it." The judge issued a restraining order. Dennis was prohibited from contacting me or my mother for 1 year. If he violated it, he'd face criminal charges. Dennis stood there, stunned. Then he turned and walked out of the courtroom without a word. I watched him go, feeling nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief, just nothing. Outside the courthouse, Patricia put a hand on my shoulder. "You did it," she said. "Yeah." "How do you feel?" "Tired." "That's normal. You've been fighting for a long time." "Is it really over?" "For now, but keep your guard up. Men like Dennis don't change. They just adapt." I nodded and walked to my car. As I drove home, I thought about everything that had happened. The power of attorney, the lawsuits, the complaints, the restraining order. I'd won every battle, but the war didn't feel like it was over, because Dennis was still out there. And I knew him well enough to know that he'd find another way to come at me. I just didn't know when, or how, but I'd be ready. The restraining order held for 8 months. 8 months of quiet, 8 months of normalcy, 8 months of Sundays at my mother's house without the shadow of Dennis hanging over everything. I started to believe it might actually be over. That was my mistake. The first sign came in late June. I was at the grocery store loading bags into my trunk when I saw him. Dennis. Standing across the parking lot, leaning against a truck, watching me. He didn't approach. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, arms crossed, staring. I closed the trunk and got in my car. As I drove away, I checked the rearview mirror. He was still standing there, watching. I called Patricia as soon as I got home. "He was at the grocery store," I said. "Did he approach you?" "No, but he was watching me." "That's not enough to violate the restraining order. He has to make contact or come within a certain distance." "So I'm supposed to just ignore him?" "For now, yes. But document it. Date, time, location. If he does it again, we'll have a pattern." 2 days later, Lauren saw him outside our house. She was taking out the trash when she noticed a car parked down the street. The driver was sitting inside, not moving. She couldn't see his face at first, but something about the car looked familiar. She walked back inside and watched from the window. 5 minutes later, the car pulled away, but she'd gotten a partial plate number. The call came at 3 in the morning. My mother's voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. "Someone's in the house," she whispered. I was out of bed before I fully processed the words. "Where are you?" "In my bedroom. I locked the door. I can hear them downstairs." "Don't move. I'm calling the police." I hung up and dialed 911 while pulling on clothes. Lauren was already awake, her face white in the darkness. "Someone's in Mom's house," I said. "Oh my God." I gave the address to the dispatcher, then grabbed my keys. "I'm going over there. Wait for the police." "I can't. She's alone." I drove faster than I should have, running 2 red lights on empty streets. My mother's house was only 10 minutes away, but it felt like an hour. When I got there, I saw a dark sedan parked half a block down with its lights off. I pulled into the driveway and ran to the front door. It was standing open, the lock broken. I could hear sirens in the distance. I stepped inside and flipped on the lights. The living room was trashed. Furniture overturned, cushions slashed, drawers pulled out and emptied onto the floor. "Mom!" I shouted. "Up here!" I took the stairs 2 at a time and found her bedroom door. "It's me. You can open it." The lock clicked and the door opened. My mother stood there in her nightgown, clutching her phone, tears streaming down her face. "Are you hurt?" I asked. "No, but they were looking for something. I heard them tearing the place apart." Police cars pulled up outside, lights flashing. Within minutes, officers flooded the house. They cleared the rooms, checked the yard, took statements. The detective who arrived was a woman named Serrano. She was in her 40s, with short dark hair and the kind of hard expression that came from seeing too much. "This was a targeted break-in," she said after surveying the damage. "They were looking for something specific." "Like what?" I asked. Money, documents, valuables, whatever your mother has that someone thinks is worth stealing. My brother owes money to dangerous people. I filed a report 2 days ago. Serrano's expression shifted. Tell me everything. I explained about Dennis, about the loan shark, about the restraining order, about the surveillance and the confrontation in the parking lot. Serrano made notes. We'll look into it, but your mother can't stay here tonight. Do you have somewhere she can go? She'll come with me. I packed a bag for my mother while the police finished their work. Then I drove her to Lauren's parents' house, where we were staying. She was quiet the whole way, staring out the window, her hands folded in her lap. When we got there, Lauren helped her inside and got her settled in the guest room. I called Patricia and explained what had happened. This is escalating beyond what I can handle, she said. You need to talk to the detective. You need to make sure they understand this is connected to Dennis. They know, but they haven't found the people who did it. They will, but in the meantime, you need to be careful, all of you. The next day, Detective Serrano called. We picked up 2 men trying to pawn your mother's jewelry, she said. They gave up the loan shark. We're bringing him in now. Did Dennis hire them? Not directly, but he gave them your mother's address. Told them she had valuables. He's an accessory. So he's going back to jail. For a long time. Breaking the restraining order. Accessory to burglary. Possibly more. He's looking at real prison time. I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not satisfaction, just finality. What about my mother? I asked. She can press charges, and she should. The more charges we stack on him, the longer he stays locked up. I talked to my mother that evening. She was sitting in the guest room, still shaken, still processing. They want you to press charges, I said. She looked at me, her eyes red. Against Dennis? Yes. He's my son. He's also the reason your house was broken into. He gave them your address. He told them where to find you. Her face crumpled. Why would he do that? Because he's desperate, and desperate people don't care who they hurt. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, What should I do? I can't make that decision for you, Mom. But if you don't press charges, he's going to keep doing this. To you, to me, to all of us. I don't want him in prison. He's already going to prison. The question is how long? She closed her eyes. Okay, I'll do it. The charges were filed the next day. Accessory to burglary, conspiracy, violation of a restraining order. Dennis was denied bail again. His sentencing hearing was scheduled for 3 months later. I attended, sitting in the back of the courtroom with Lauren and my mother. Dennis looked defeated. His hair was longer, unkempt, his face was gaunt. He didn't look at us when they brought him in. The judge read the charges, then he looked at Dennis. Mr. Patterson, you've been given multiple chances to correct your behavior. You've filed frivolous lawsuits, you've violated court orders, and now you've endangered your own mother. I see no reason for leniency. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in state prison. Dennis's head dropped. I saw his shoulders shake, and for a moment I thought he might cry. But he didn't. He just stood there, silent, as they led him away. My mother cried. I put my arm around her, and we left the courthouse together. Outside, the sunlight felt too bright. The world felt too normal, like nothing had happened, but everything had happened. I drove my mother back to her house, which had been cleaned and repaired. The locks had been changed, a security system installed. She looked around, taking it all in. It doesn't feel like home anymore, she said. It will. Give it time. Will it ever be over? It is over. Dennis is in prison. He can't hurt you anymore. But the damage is done. I didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right. The damage was done. To her, to me, to all of us. But we'd survived. And that was something. A week later, I got a letter from Dennis. It was short, handwritten on prison stationery. I'm sorry. I know you won't believe me, but I am. I destroyed everything, and I did it to myself. You were right, about all of it. I hope you can find peace. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I read it once. Then I folded it and put it in a drawer. Lauren asked if I was going to respond. No, I said. Do you forgive him? No, but I don't hate him either. He's just gone. And I'm okay with that. She nodded. What now? Now we move on. And we did. Slowly. Carefully. But we moved on. Sundays with my mother continued. The bills got paid. Life returned to something resembling normal. But I never forgot. I never let my guard down. Because I'd learned that family could betray you, that trust could be weaponized, that love didn't always mean safety, and I'd learned that sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to stand your ground, to fight back, to refuse to be a victim. Dennis had tried to destroy me. He'd tried to take everything, but he'd failed, and I'd made sure of it. I'd signed one document, I'd built one case, I'd fought one battle at a time, and I'd won.